Hi, Christine.
Hello.
I think it's just going to be you and me today.
Oh, Noam's not gonna make it?
Yeah, Noam said in the Slack that he actually couldn't make this time. So he requested that we set up something on Monday, but unfortunately Monday's a holiday for me.
And Monday's a
So
holiday for us.
we're completely like, yeah, messed around. I mean, I think yeah, Monday's a holiday. Okay, so I suggest that we just keep we work on this PR,
Yeah,
you and me over, like, let's take a look and review it and land it today, right?
yeah,
And then and then we should just take less than a half an hour to do that, really. And then
yes.
we meet up again next week is my thoughts.
Yeah, because I think the deadline we were working towards was trying to do something for May 30th so that Crow could talk about it. So we should still be able to do that with this PRN.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, and I was reviewing it and I think it looks great. There are a couple of things I wanted to ask about.
Yeah,
One of the things was in some of the operations cases, you've added icons
yeah,
to indicate applicability for of those things, but they're not linked to anything. And I was wondering, is your thinking that we should provide additional, the next step might be to provide additional new best practice pages for each one of those items with a little bit more detail on each one?
yeah. So that was actually, I just dropped in 5 minutes ago, some open questions, and that was one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So, uh, so if you look at my comment, I'll just drop it in copy the link and should I share my screen or just
Got it.
drop the links in the comment? So this is just a link to a comment that I just added.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
So your first question is, yeah, right. Because even before that, we did have like bullet points for the operations, but we don't talk about them a little bit more. And so that's a question, like, should the docs be manually generated for items that don't automatically come from Legidify? So that was one question I had. It seems like if we want to maintain consistency, yeah, we should. And there's also a couple of items that seem like they should come from Legidify, but they didn't, like GitLab things seems
SSO.
SSO, but it wasn't mentioned. So it might just be a pull request on the Legidify side so that they pull that in. But let me look at one of the operations. Organizational management should be consolidated under a central account. I guess we could say more about that in a little blurb, but there's no like remediation. It's not like the same
Yeah.
thing. It's not like a thread example. So I'm not sure if it's just like it just becomes a little blurb.
I think
But then I wasn't sure because the only reason I put the icons in there again to start off before I realized it's good to have them linked is because not all of the recommendations are for GitLab or GitHub and some of them
yeah,
for
yeah, totally get it. Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
think
then
it's good. I think it's a good thing. I think what we should use that as a talking point for discussion at the next call. I think we should land it as is, basically. But just kind of document that. And then I think that the other question I had was, oh, sorry. Yeah. I mean, in terms of what gets automatically regenerated versus what gets manually created, I think the route that we're on seems to be that we manually edit the the index pages, the README files, and
Yeah.
that all of the individual best practice, single pages are regenerated from Legitify data, right?
Yeah.
So as long as, so I think that's doable and sustainable.
Yeah.
Because we want to make these documents more readable. And I think that's so that's kind of what I want to, what I would like to suggest, and that as a kind of work mode going forward for as we update this,
Yeah.
we simply make PRs on the README files, but we know that not to make PRs on those files, because those ones will be regenerated. So as long as that's okay, like I guess where I see that, ideally, GNOME puts into place a mechanism where new single pages, like if they change the page for two-factor authentication on GitHub, because GitHub changes their configuration, so they need to change how that reads, then they would regenerate that page, and it would just ideally would generate a pull request against the repo with just that change in it, so that we can see, we can then take a look at it and approve it through the GitHub mechanism.
Got it. Got it.
But I kind of want to talk that through with GNOME to see if that's possible for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be possible, but it's asking them to do more work, basically. And then, so I just want to make sure that it's okay with them. And then we take responsibility for the updates to the README files, rather than having that generated out of the thing.
Yeah, that
but
makes
as far as go ahead.
I said that makes sense, because then if we manually generate some pages, we wouldn't have to redo it. If it were happening automatically, it would all kind of get flushed out.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have one other person.
I'll just share for Chris, I'll just share the comment to the PR that we're looking at right now.
Hi, Chris.
Hey. Good
We're
morning.
basically just reviewing Christine's PR. And I think the idea is that we merge it. I mean, the other thing that I did is I left a comment or a suggested change.
Makes sense.
Yeah, okay. So if you want to just sign off and commit suggestion.
Is that how it works now?
Sorry?
No, but I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's really nice. I love using this UI, actually, for documents, especially good. Yeah.
So sign off and commit. Oh, that's nice. It's really cool.
Yeah, and then we can. So that I use that a lot for standards work that I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I'm gonna just give it I'm gonna leave a review, approve.
Yeah. So there was a couple of other questions that I also had. It talked about integrating security tools, but in the intro, there's like the last line says this: we're going to be discussing a bunch of topics, including integrating security tools. But I did not see mention of security tools, unless that means like scanning tools. Is that what it kind of means?
Oh, we can remove that. Yeah, I see what you mean. Let me go ahead and remove that. I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I had from kind of like, if you go and click on any of the documents that link to, say, the Legitify automatically created docs, it's usually will have something. I'll quickly share one quick screen so So you see how it says, this is an example of a particular page. Say GitHub action runs are not limited. And then it always has this thing called policy name. And that's kind of weird if I'm just like looking at this code, like, I'm not even sure what that means.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's the short, I guess it's the short name. It's the thing that shows that it's the file name of the file, right? So it actually doesn't really need to be there. We can
Okay.
feed that back to GNOME. You
Yeah,
know, yeah,
yeah, we can just tell them that it might not be. And then I know later on, I know when I was looking at the Legitify docs quite a bit, I would look at the severity medium. I would look at like severity high, and I would sort of make a judgment call based on what I thought it was, and I try to do all the high and the mediums and ignore the lows. All of our suggestions always say should, which I guess is okay. Should all over the place. Which I guess
yeah,
is okay, but if I'm not kind of like going and running through this, I guess I could click on each one of them and make my own judgment call, which I guess later on we can figure out whether we want to talk about that, because that was a process that we had to go through, that I had to go through.
yeah. I mean, I think it's if we get into the discussion about whether to use should or must, then people will,
It becomes crazy, yeah.
yeah, will argue with us. I think it's best practices, right? So at the end of the day, we have to, you know, we have to say should, and then I think it's up to organizations who take it, who use this to say, you know what, you must comply with
Yeah.
these things. Yeah,
That's true, because you also just called it recommendations. That makes it like,
yeah,
these are recommendations and you should do this. I was okay with it. I was just, I guess people will use their best judgment of what works for them. Okay.
So if you want to accept that other suggestion, I'm happy to press the button that says merge and squash and merge,
Okay.
and then we can move forward based on that.
All right.
I don't think GNOME will object.
What? All right, cool. So I just did that.
All right, I'm going to merge. Is that right?
Cool. So whatever we do in terms of like either generating manual pages or other things that we want to have GNOME do, we can do those separately in a different
Yeah.
PRs. Okay.
Yeah, that's merged.
Okay, cool. That's good.
Look at it.
So maybe what I'll do, maybe next week or after talking to GNOME and getting his input, is either file separate issues on Legitify for things that I think should be there. I also
Yeah.
took my best guess. I'm not a GitLab expert, but I did go through the GitLab docs to try to see if I could map certain things to other things. But there might be some
Yeah.
things just by not being a GitLab expert.
Yeah. Hi, Avishai.
Hey, sorry for being late.
No worries. We're just wrapping up. Really, we worked through Christine's PR and we just merged it because it basically we talked around a couple of potential changes, but basically it adds editorial content to the README files. And then I think the other thing that we need to talk about next week is what do we do with these operations suggestions, given that we don't, or operations recommendations, given that they don't have individual files. Should we recommend that Legitify start to add best practices around these, and or should they just live entirely within our document and we put them in a separate directory and update them separately? So I guess that's a question for GNOME. to
Yeah.
answer as well, whether or not they want to take that on.
Mhm.
But some of these are linked.
Yeah, the ones that are obviously linked, but some of them are just like you should review your policies, whatever, or those are not really, they're more like operational type of things.
Yeah.
not gonna
And
have them.
unfortunately, the way this works is that they're all hot linked. All the logos are hot linked, but if they're not linked to a specific best practice, it just links to the SVG image. So we got to fix that, but it's not a. I think it's good to keep it like this now as a conversation tool to say, okay, well, what do we want to do with this? If we have recommendations that don't have
Yeah.
a specific singleton pages, then should we still have the logo, or should we have applicable to GitHub, or applicable, like should we have it in words or what? So those are questions that we can put to the group next week.
Oh, okay, because there's no way to do a logo without having it linked to something.
Yeah, it seems to me like that's the way that GitHub Markdown seems to be processing it anyway. I don't know. Maybe I'm not enough of a GitHub Markdown whiz to know how to.
Sorry,
how to
which
do
part?
It's
Let me
in the
just-
in the README file, in the general README file underneath operations.
Yes.
There's a bunch of best practices that are not, that then have an icon like GitHub or GitLab icon, but that there's no actual page that it links to. So there's no link around the icon.
Yes.
So
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just saying, so therefore, what GitHub Markdown seems to do is to link it to the
image.
icon.
What would you like it to
Not do nothing.
do? Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then if you make it a, see, part of the issue there is that you've got. Sorry, let me look at the raw again. I think you've got raw HTML for those.
Yeah,
Oh, well, sort of. You've got a mix of raw HTML.
yeah,
So you've got the bracket.
as far as I could tell,
around-
this was the only way to inline an SVG image in a link, or but if there's a better way to do
You're
it
making them-
using pure Markdown, I'm that'd be great, but I just didn't
No,
see
see
that.
the, wait a minute. Some places have,
Some of them are linked and some of them aren't, is the thing.
and the ones that aren't are still being,
The ones that aren't are still
Okay.
live as a link. It's just that the link points to the image file
okay.
for some reason.
I
It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter because this is an interim step of this document. It's this is for discussion next week, and we can figure out what we want to do with these items that don't have singleton pages.
But you're saying if you try and use the actual markdown image expected format, then SVGs won't load?
Something, yeah, I tried it and it didn't seem to work. So I ended up hacking something together, but there might be a better way.
General question about this SCM platform configuration best practices. Guide has been written, the audience is stated as the maintainers for GitHub repositories, open source program offices, which implies company. But some of these recommendations, right, they're contextual. Like, so for example, when you talk about group membership should be employees, that would not apply, of course, when you're dealing with, community driven open source projects.
Yeah, that's something that it did occur to me. Yeah, Chris, sorry.
Yeah, same thing. It occurred to me as well. So it's good discussion.
So I don't know. I don't have necessarily a particular recommendation, but it might, I don't know, off the top of my head, we could maybe have some, I don't know,
More general wording, more generic wording, like,
yeah, either more general or maybe there are, I think there are important differences for how you manage open source work for a company's open source projects that may be they may have a different contribution policy. They may be open source, but contributions work a little differently, or membership will work a little differently. So, you know, I don't know, there could be
I was thinking
a
about
fork
what,
of recommendations depending on the particular context, but
I was trying to think of a more general way to say that without also using the word organization, because part of the problem is that we're
Exactly.
using the word organization to mean GitHub organization, or,
right,
so
it's
like,
overloaded.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exact same issue. I'm like, I wanted to say employees, and I said people affiliated with the organization. I'm like, oh gosh, I don't even know what to do.
Then it sounds like a tautology. Organization
Yeah.
should only be available to people that are in the organization. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. So any recommendations, or maybe we just reword it or reorganize it, would be very helpful.
Do you think you could leave a issue, Chris?
Yeah, sure.
And
I can open one.
then we can start working on it on the basis of issues and PRs and good old stuff like that.
Sure, I will make a note to do that.
We just
And the other thing that is, I guess this Thursday and this Friday, there are two OSPO related working groups within the To-Do organization. And one of the things I thought even like Daniel had wanted to kind of like present some of this in front of the end users group. So do you want to kind of like go off and just at least give them a higher level overview and get initial input as well?
I did say that I was going to do that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that and just give them the high level and talk them through this through the document as it currently exists,
Yeah.
just to get feedback.
Yeah, get feedback that we can action on or at least talk about in the next meeting. And I can do the same in the To-Do group and just like give them a sense of this is what it is. Is this useful in this current format?
Yeah. Let me just leave a message on their Slack channel. Yeah, okay. So that's good.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Okay,
So
sounds good.
let's keep collaborating on the channel and I'll see you next week. Yeah.
All right, thank
All
you.
right. All right. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, bye.